Welcome to another edition of the Outstanding People podcast. I'm your host, Slade Abasroor. If you're a veteran or have a veteran in your family, this is an important episode to listen to. My guest today is Troy North, who is a veteran advocate with the VFW in Detroit, Michigan. Troy and I served together in the Navy, and after leaving the service, Troy continued to serve the veteran community by not only educating, but helping veterans file and claim their much-deserved VA benefits. Today, we're going to discuss how you as a veteran or a veteran's representative can claim important benefits that you deserve as well. So I hope you enjoy the show, and if you know a veteran, please pass this episode along to them. It's an important one for our whole community. Welcome to the show, Troy.
Thanks, Slade. I appreciate the invite. I've been listening to the podcast. You're doing a great job, and
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm blown away. To be invited. So
well,
thanks.
Look, it's my pleasure, and like I said, I mean, I think really what you're doing is pretty outstanding. You're out there in the community. You're helping our community of veterans, and myself included. There are so many things that I think when veterans transition out of the military that they're not aware of that they are entitled to. And when they do find that out, sometimes it's a hard road even getting to that point of being able to claim those benefits or just navigating to find out what you're entitled to. So that's where people like you come in and you guide them and you help them down that road. And you give veterans an opportunity to really, make their lives better in so many ways. But first, I want to go back a little bit because you and I served together in the Navy. One of my proudest moments. I was just honored to do it, but doing it with people like you made it so much better. We both served in VAQ 136, a squadron out of Atsugi, Japan. We were attached to the USS Independence. We were a forward deployed unit out there. And for those that don't know, a forward deployed unit is just we lived overseas in Japan. That way, if anything went down in that sector of the world, there was always a naval force there to be able to be the first ones to respond. So we were attached to an attack squadron out there. And I guess my question for you is, what first drew you to the Navy? Was it something you always wanted to do, or how did you go about finding your path into enlisting in the Navy?
Yeah, it wasn't on the radar, if you will, after I while I was in school and things of that nature. I had grown up with a military family. My dad was prior Marine. My uncle was prior Army during the Vietnam era, both of them. My grandfather was World War II Purple Heart recipient in, like I said, World War II. So, I mean, I had cousins and things of that nature that it was always around me. Was it something I actually thought I was going to seek out? I at the time, I was kind of undecided. I took some time off after I graduated from high school just to kind of get a better grasp of where things were going.
Sure.
I found out real quickly they were going nowhere. So um, so yeah,
like a
I
bunch
found
of us, just
myself.
a band of misfits.
So yeah, I found myself signing up. And, really at the beginning of it, I really thought I was going to get into architecture and things of that nature, and quickly found out that, when you go see a Navy recruiter, they're just willing to sign you up for anything at this point.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
man, we could do
So,
a
I
whole
mean, some of
podcast
them
on,
are, yeah. So, you go through the system and whatnot, and you get there and you find out that at the end of it you're going to be attached to a fast frigate in Rhode Island. That not what you signed up for. So I spoke up real quickly and said, "No, this ain't happening." So yeah, it was a stroke of luck, Slade. I'll be honest with you. I ended up in aviation, and I worked my way through the different schools, the A school and whatnot, and found myself progressing, as I went through the schools, and really wasn't quite sure what this was going to look like.
Yeah.
Um, but I was along for the ride. They had me for 4 years.
Isn't it
So.
funny though how that recruiting works? Is same with when I went into the recruiter, I went into the what's called the delayed entry program.
Mhm.
And it's where you sign up before you're 18. Your parents have to give
Oh,
permission.
absolutely.
But so I was 17 when I signed up, and I don't know why I did at 17 because I had to wait anyways. So I still had to finish
Hmm.
school and then go in. But I was so anxious to go in, and they probably saw that when I went in there, and the recruiter, like I told him all these things I want to do, and somehow he gets me to sign up for not only 4 years, for 6 years as an elevator mechanic. And I'm like the furthest thing from what I was planning on doing. But
Yeah.
they have this billet to fill, and they have this smooth way of talking to you, and they make it sound so
Oh.
cool. And I was gonna be an E4 coming out of A school, so they like sold that whole thing. And I was like, wow, fantastic! I'll be an E4, and blah blah blah. And I didn't even know what an E4 was really. I was just like, oh, okay, it sounds like I'm gonna be at a higher rank. And then when I get to boot camp, and then so time had gone by, I was in the delayed entry program, and time had gone by, and I talked to my uncle, and my uncle was like, "What the hell are you doing? What do you mean? You mean elevator mechanic?" He's like, "You need to be in the air wing. You got to be on top of the ship. You got to be, you get breathe fresh air. You see the dolphins jumping. You
Yeah.
see whales coming at you. Like you're out and you feel alive." And I'm like, "Well, shit, I just signed the thing." He was like, "Well, if there any way you can get into the air wing, do it." So when I was in boot camp, I don't know if somebody was looking out for me or what, but in the middle of boot camp, we're in class, and a you know E6 comes in and says, "All right, everybody, listen up. Does anybody want to trade in your billet or rating for we have an undesignated airman spot?" And I didn't know what undesignated
Mm.
meant, but I heard airman, and I was like, "Bing, me, I'll do it. I'll trade it in." Then I found out undesignated means you're going to go to the line shack, and you're going to just start from the bottom and work. But the way
Right.
they sold it is you're going to get to go to every shop in the squadron, and you're going to get to try everything and then pick the one that you like. I was like, okay, yeah. I got there, and I'm carrying chains, and I'm greasing this, and I'm cleaning this. But yeah, but anyways, I made it to the air wing with you. But it's just to kind of, back up your story of saying when you go to the recruiter, you got to really do your research, and unfortunately when we went, there was no internet, right? But now you got
Correct.
to do your research, and you got to really stick to your guns and get what you want, because they will sell you into something that you probably don't want
Oh
to.
yeah, they sold a bill of goods, and that's just where it was at. Like you were saying, I remember being in boot camp and going and speaking with an individual, and he's like, "So you don't want to be on a fast frigate?" I said, "Well, who does?" So what else you got? And he's like, "Well, do you like automotive? Do you like working on vehicles? What do you like?" I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I'm a hands-on guy. I like that sort of thing." And it just turned out that. There was a one seat left in a structural mechanics school in Millington, Tennessee. And he says, "Hey, it's yours if you want it. Take it now, because if you don't, the guy out in the hallway behind you
Right.
more than likely is." So I really wasn't sure what I was in for at that time, but I knew it was better than what was in front of me. So yeah, it got into the air wing, like you were mentioning, and boy, getting in those classes and really
Mm.
sitting with those group of individuals that actually had an idea of what aviation was really like and what it
Right.
was about,
Right.
not just um, uh, understanding that, oh, plane takes off, plane lands. I mean, these folks actually knew aeronautics.
Right.
So it really was an eye opener.
I was gonna say, like, I felt like I had to work extra hard because coming in as
Mm,
a non-des, and then working my way into the AE shop and becoming a troubleshooter on the flight deck. Like every day I thought to myself, I have no business doing this, like, but I worked extra hard and studied extra hard because I knew I had
Yep.
no training. I had no, and you're right. And people around us were, I mean, that's their whole thing was aviation. They were just so gung ho for
Correct.
aviation. So yeah, it was amazing, man. And, a really great time. Like I couldn't have asked for a better squadron for us to be sent to because I don't know.
I
Was 136 your first duty station, or did you do something
Yes.
before that? Okay. Yes.
No, 136 was my first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you do any training in Whidbey Island beforehand
I did.
at 129?
We had to go through hydraulic school on top of the structural mechanic as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you being an AE, you were dealing with what, the electronics and things
Electronics,
of that
right?
nature, right?
Right.
So yeah. So I was changing tires, dealing with hydraulic pumps, actuators, things like that, sheet metal,
Yeah.
corrosion, paint, anything like that.
Yeah. My first day on the job at 136, I show up. I fly into Japan. The ship was out at the time. I think they were doing I don't know if it was the Australia trip. Were you on the Australia
Did you
trip?
go through the?
I didn't do the
Did
no.
you
I
end up
didn't do
going
the shell
across the
back.
equator?
No, I didn't do the shell
You didn't
back.
do it?
Yeah, I
Oh,
did the
okay.
I did the international date line, but I had gotten there
Gotcha.
when the ship was on its way back. I think from Australia. So when the ship gets
Mm-hmm.
back, I didn't know anybody. I was just basically hanging around the base waiting for the ship to get back for like
That's
a
what
week.
I was doing.
Yeah. And then when I first report to 136 at our duty station, I go out there and everybody's on the, where they park the airplanes, and they say to me, they're like, all right, get over here, get over here. We need you to go over to the shop over there and grab some flight line. And you got to do it quick because the planes are coming back. And I'm like, you got it. I just wanted to impress them. So I'm like, I run over to the shop and I'm like, all right, I need some flight line stat. The planes are coming back. And the guy looks at me. He goes, get the fuck out of my shop. And I'm like, dude, listen, it's my first day. They're asking me for the flight line. I got to get them the flight line. The planes are coming back.
I don't want to disappoint.
Yeah, and I'm just like, with everything, I'm just like, I'm going to get this flight line, not knowing what the hell I'm getting. So the guy's finally like, he's E6 or whatever. He was yelling at me. He's like, get out of my shop now. So I run back over there and they're like, you need to get it, man. These planes are, and I run back to the shop. I'm like, listen, I need this stuff right. He goes, you dumbass, flight line is where they park the airplanes. He's like, there is no such thing as flight line. It's just where they park the air. And I run out. Everybody's just laughing at me, dude. And that was my in-dock into the squadron. And then, after that, nobody really messed with me too much. But it was just such a great, what I loved about 136 and what I loved about Japan is, it was a West Coast Navy, right, versus like an East Coast Navy. The rules were more lax, and we were more like a family because we all lived overseas together. There was we didn't have actual family there, so we had to become our own family, and we had to depend on each other, and we really became close.
Absolutely.
And it was just that's not to say that we didn't fight and have our issues with people sometimes, but it just felt like you can really do anything, even with the officers. Like, you're not really supposed to fraternize, but you'd see an officer out, they'd buy you a drink or whatever. Like, everybody was just very close in that squadron. And I just remember that feeling of that, because when I went to the East Coast Navy, it was not like that.
Well, you and I are both VAQ
140
140 when we went back.
That's right. Yeah, and I remember
East
we had to
Coast
wear
out of
collared
Whidbey,
shirts.
so
Then
it was different.
It was different. In Japan or in the
No maids.
Nah, yeah. Dude, I have a friend of mine that was ship's company on the Indy, and good friend of mine, and he always ribs me about that because they had to live in the racks on the we get back to port,
for sure.
and we're going back to our air base, and we have maids coming in the room and clean it up. It's so horrible.
Folding laundry.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was great. So 136. So where did we tour? What places do you remember most about touring 136? We really got to see some cool places.
God, we we really hit some really nice places.
And that was the nice thing
Especially
about,
like the workup.
yeah,
Before we even got to the ship. I mean, did you go to Iwo? Did you make Iwo
I
Jima?
didn't do Iwo Jima. I did Guam, which was a nice
Okay.
detachment. And in Guam, we were working 24 on, 24 off.
Yeah,
So that was
I remember that.
that was fun. Yeah, it was crazy while you were working, but when you had off, you would just go crazy.
Yeah.
But then, we'd hit some really cool places. Where did we go? We were in Singapore and
Uh,
Thailand and,
yeah.
like I said,
Hong Kong.
Guam, Hong Kong. Yep. Where
Yep.
else? Man, we were all over the
It
place.
seemed like we'd make the run. Yeah, Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii.
We'd end up there. We'd Thailand a few times, Hong Kong quite a bit,
Yeah.
Singapore, like you said. I think that was my first stop.
Oh, Singapore.
Being on the ship. Yeah, Singapore was my first. Import type of deal. You join the Navy to see the world.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, and
That's right.
boy, I tell you what, they didn't disappoint.
No, that's why
When
I think we were very lucky that our duty station was a forward deployed unit overseas. Because I know a lot of guys that spent time in the States and really never did anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And for us, we had the opportunity to just travel the world and really expose ourselves to different culture and educate ourselves. It was really great, a great experience.
Absolutely.
And then so
Japan was an outstanding place
oh
to,
man,
be stationed for all that time and know that, we were in a location that we got to go out in town. We got to
yeah.
experience the people. We got to experience the food, the culture. It was heck. If that was all we would have got to do, that'd have been enough for me at
So
that point.
true, so true. It's so true. And talk about a culture that, I mean, it is completely different. Like you go to Europe, you can get by reading signs and
Hmm.
the language, the way it's spelt. Like if you could see something and read it, right? In Japan,
Right.
it's kanji. You don't have a clue
Stick
what it is.
figures.
Yeah, and you have to learn, the basics to
Hmm.
just get around.
Yep.
My favorite thing was jumping on a train when I had time off. I would just jump on a train and go get
Oh
lost,
yeah.
and
Yep.
everybody was so nice. When I got my orders to Japan, I didn't know what to think, right? Because I was a young kid. All I could think about is World War II. Oh my gosh, we dropped a bomb. They're going to hate us. It was so ignorant, the way I could, but I didn't have the knowledge to know any better. When I got there,
Hmm.
I mean, they were just the nicest people ever.
Oh, weren't they?
You can just go out and they say you can look at a map and turn it upside down and somebody will come walking over to you and put you on a train and take you to your destination if you're lost, not ask you for a
I've been
dime.
there. I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So really, really a special place. And then, so at some point, then you decide that you're going to leave Japan.
Yeah. I really wanted to stay. My father had taken ill,
Hmm. That's
and
right.
it was quite serious, and I knew I needed to uh, get a little closer to home, even if it was the west side of the United States. I mean, we
Yeah.
were on the west coast there at Whidbey Island, but it was at least a little bit closer than coming from Japan. So, and that was the biggest reason why I ended up back in Whidbey Island,
Hmm.
where it all started. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Same. And then, for me, I was so happy to get those orders too and know that you were there because that's when we became roommates in 140 in
yeah,
Whidbey. And then but it's funny because I was in Japan for 2 years and I loved it, but I was starting to feel a little homesick, right? Because the music that we
sure,
got and the movies that we saw, everything was delayed, and you're starting to feel like you're missing out on stuff. And I was just slowly drifting away from my life in the States. So after my 2 years, I was like, you know what? I want to go back stateside. But as soon as I got to 140, we went on deployment to the Adriatic, and that's when Bosnia went down and everything else, and we
yeah.
wound up going over to Bosnia. We spent the next 2 years overseas, but in Europe. But for in retrospect, I love it because we spent our first 2 years traveling Asia, and then we spent the next 2 years traveling Europe. So you really can't
Yeah.
beat that.
Yeah, I tell people on a regular basis, when they ask, oh, how long were you in the Navy? I said, just 4 years. And they said, oh, what'd you do? And he's like, well, you did, a couple of West Packs, you did, the run ups, things of that nature. And then you shoot back over to we're on the West Coast of the United States over there in Washington State. And then we get shipped across the United States,
Right.
Norfolk, there, Virginia, end up on the George Washington,
That's
USS
right.
George Washington, and I look back at it now, and it's like, God, thank God we were forward deployed in Japan, because no more did we put our boots on the ground in Whidbey Island. We were shipped right back
Hmm.
on, off to catch another ride, and I wasn't sore at all, because I'd seen all of Southeast Asia pretty much for the most part. So the fact that we were going to get to do a med cruise and go through what we did was quite amazing. And I recall our time together, spending a lot of time doing tours and
Hmm.
things of like that we didn't do a lot of in Southeast Asia. I mean,
Oh
we did,
man.
but we took
Yeah.
more advantage
Absolutely.
of
Yeah.
Europe.
I remember you and I we toured the Colosseum in Rome, and that's something like in
Yeah.
Asia we would have never done that. We would have found the closest bar and just posted up, and spent the day with everybody else, just debauchery. But yeah, but Europe was definitely, it was more educational, and we got to see the sights, and I think we went to
Took full advantage.
yeah, was it you and I went to Austria together, correct?
Yes, we
We
did.
did, right?
Yeah. Yes, we did. That was a good time.
Oh my God, so fun, so fun. And by the way, in both, we should say in Japan, while we were stationed at 136 and 140, we did deployments to the Persian Gulf. So that whole thing was going
Yes,
on where we were,
absolutely.
flying. It wasn't all like fun and games. We were actually working
No,
and
God, no.
defending the 30-second parallel, and putting
Right.
putting some work in. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, so then at a certain point you decide that all right, you're going to get out and you wanted to do something else. What was going through? What was the thought process? And were you thinking of doing service work when you got out, or was that not a thought yet?
It's funny you mentioned that. So as it's getting closer to my time of getting ready to separate, it's like, okay, I've got all this knowledge that I've just obtained from the last 4 years, and how am I going to capitalize on this? And I thought, what, with all the aviation maintenance that I have learned through my time there, it's like this has got to be the natural progression. Let's take it to the next level, and getting out and getting that aviation power plants license was first and foremost. So
Oh wow.
yeah, signed up for a school, and as I was getting ready to use the GI Bill that we had invested so heavily in while we were in, that was the goal, was aviation maintenance.
It's smart. It
And
seems like a
then
natural
yeah,
progression to do that.
yeah.
And that's something that, for people listening that are thinking about going into the military, the jobs are very relatable to the outside world.
Mm,
So you can definitely, at least in the Navy, the rate that you have in the Navy, you can find a job on the outside. It's a great throughway to the
absolutely.
outside world, as in your case, working in aviation in the military and then being able to get a job on the outside.
Absolutely, absolutely. I found myself going to school, like you had mentioned. It was a great opening for another opportunity, and I found myself doing it here in Michigan, which is not always the warmest of
Oh,
6 months towards once October hits, everybody battens down the hatches and gets ready for the white stuff. But it took me a hot second to figure that out. And during the process, I was working on a private airfield in Pontiac, Michigan, and got on with a small aviation company. And while I was going to school, I was uh, just seeing how it actually works. It's completely different,
Mm,
obviously, from our time in service to the real world, right? But
sure.
a lot of the same things apply. Um, so I got on with a group where I was refueling all these private aircraft, which was really neat, and helping maintenance when I could, apply some of the knowledge that I had obtained
Sure.
while I was going to school, while I was in the service, and I did that for a few years, and I thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way to make a living.
Mm.
Not being
Than
out in the
freezing your
cold.
ass off
Uh,
outside.
so, yeah, exactly. I found myself migrating towards the indoors. So
Yeah.
yeah, I found myself looking at dispatching aircraft versus fixing them,
Smart,
figuring
right?
out how to get them from point A to point B. And I was very fortunate to have come across a couple of companies um, that did just that in the cargo industry.
Nice.
And I had come across some very, very patient individuals to show me the ropes.
Let
And
me ask you, did the fact
yeah,
that
go
you
ahead.
were a veteran help you at all in achieving these jobs? Because I found like when I got out, just the mention that I was in the service and I was now looking for a job, the employers were more apt to say to me, we'll help train you, we'll, this and that, but because you served, we'd like you to come join us.
Oh, absolutely. I agree 100%. Knowing that you were prior military definitely helped, especially in that industry, because you are operating with a number of veterans
Hmm.
that have served prior to that. um, and it also they also knew that you were capable of learning, you were capable of being on point, you had the ability, especially if you were operating in these circles,
That's
right?
right.
You came from it in some way, some form, that you were capable of possibly taking it to the next level. And yeah, I agree with you 100% on that one there.
And then so at
Being a
what
veteran
point,
definitely.
oh yeah, no, it definitely helps for sure. And then at what point do you take a career change and find yourself starting to help other veterans? Because I think that's really cool that you were able to make that career change and just continue to serve.
Yeah, no, it's funny. When going circling back, asking, how did you get into doing what you did after your time in service? And I remember, getting home, being around your friends and family, and everybody's asking, what's the next move?
Right.
What are you gonna do? And this, that, and the other. And it's like,
I'm
but
just gonna
always in the
sleep
back
for
of
a
my
while.
mind, I always, yeah, right, not wake up with an alarm clock.
Yeah.
But I do recall saying to myself, I would like to give back in some way, some fashion. I just didn't know what that lane was going to look like, right?
Yeah.
One of my first jobs was actually working at a VFW post after I got out of service.
Oh.
I was slinging beers at the post, sitting with veterans. Oh yeah, man, it was a
Yeah.
great job. Had a great time, great couple of summers there. Um, but really kept that military aspect around me, and got to see these individuals that would talk about this sort of thing from time to time, but I really didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah.
When we start discussing how we are going to assist other veterans. So at that time I was just slinging beers and thinking, I just got to get through this aviation program. But it was always in the back of the mind that I wanted to assist in some way, some form. Just didn't know what that was
Sure.
going to look like.
Yeah. And then so
20 plus years of.
how did you find yourself then? I mean, I'm sure time had went by, but how did you find yourself then actually having the opportunity to go on not just the bar side of it, but then actually the
Yeah,
administrative side of it?
great question. I had finished working with the aviation industry for the time being. I was, I had done it for 20 plus years, and I just uh, wanted to do something different. So I was working for a uh, small college, and in their admissions department, and helping other veterans, other students,
Nice.
statewide, throughout the United States, try to find their way. Right. So a lot of it was aviation maintenance, if it was HVAC or wind power or something like that. But there were a lot of a lot of prior military, if you will.
So were you
And I got,
finding, were you taking whatever rate they had or whatever job they had in the military and just helping them find a path, a career path through school, or like what
yes,
classes to
absolutely.
take, and like kind of guiding
Hmm.
them to that
Yep.
path and use those
Yep.
credits that they have from the military? Um,
Correct. Correct.
that had to feel
So
good. Yeah, that's
Uh,
great.
yeah, well, absolutely. You're helping, the younger generation,
Hmm.
coming up. They don't necessarily, have the assistance, if you will, to help them, navigate those lanes. So as I'm doing that, there was actually a veterans service officer representative there on site that were helping these vets, making sure that they were getting their COLA pay, and their GI Bill was
Hmm.
paying for the school, and everything was, in line as it should be. Um,
Such an
and
important job
really,
too. It was such an
oh,
important job
yeah.
to be able to help, veterans, especially. Imagine when we go in, we're 18 years old, come out, we're 22, right? 23. So to be able to have to go to school and then navigate all that payment system and this and that, it's so
Oh,
so
absolutely.
important to have a representative there to
Hmm.
help you navigate all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, working there, I was able to work side by side with the veterans advocate that was there on site, and he actually, you know, educated me.
Hmm.
Like, hey, Troy, are you going to the VA? Are you getting your health care taken care of? Are you, have you filed your claims? Are you getting? And I'm looking at him like a deer in the headlights, and I'm like, what are you talking
Right.
about?
Like what?
And I'm well into my 40s at this point. I never knew that this was something that it was even available to us. So uh, funny. Uh, he, I at this point I'm picking his brain. Hey, how'd you get to this point? What certifications were you obtaining? Who did you talk to? Just the whole thing. And he turned me on, and I ended up taking a class out of Lansing, Michigan, through the Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency, the MVAA. They hold training for veteran service officers, veteran advocates, if you
Hmm.
will, and it's required yearly. And depending if you're an advocate through a school, or doing it through one of these organizations like the VFW, the American Legion, the DAV, or the VBA, they all have to come to these locations and go through this recurrent training, if you
Yeah.
will. And I went because I wanted to know what is going on. How are they getting from point A to point B? How are they assisting? And it really opened my eyes. Really opened my eyes. So once I went through that, um, I had applied to a couple of positions here in Michigan, looking for said advocate.
Hmm.
And I really wasn't hoping for a lot, but I figured, well, I've taken the time, I put myself out there
Sure.
to just see what happens, and the DAV had contacted me, and they weren't really quite what I don't think I was quite what they were looking
And what
for
is
at the
that? The
time.
Detroit Veterans Administration?
That is the Disabled
Oh,
American
to say. Oh,
Veterans.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So, and hey, it was an interview. It was getting in front of somebody. It was, hearing the lingo, just getting your name out there, right? And that didn't work out. But I'd say probably a couple weeks later, uh, um, my director, now, who was my supervisor then, Sydney Love, had contacted me, and wanted me to come in and sit down and have a conversation with them. And being that I had quite a um, illustrious customer service background, it helped. You know,
Nice.
being able to talk to people, and you know me, I'm not too short on words at times. I hold my own from time to time.
For sure.
Uh, so he gave me a chance. He gave me a chance
That's
and
amazing.
brought me in.
And let's get into the VFW a little, because as I
Yeah,
was kind of telling you off the air, and you kind of mentioned it too. You were bartending at the VFW. I didn't realize the advocacy work and the outreach that the VFW does for veterans, how extensive it is. I thought there was a VFW post, and that's where veterans go and you grab a drink and you hang out, and you talk to other veterans and you share stories. But in researching this podcast, this interview that I was going to do with you, I was floored at the amount of outreach that the VFW does. From They do everything from troop support to they have a whole division for fighting for women's veterans' rights. They have a mental health division. They have legislative priorities where they actually have a team in Washington that is helping to fight legislation to have better laws for veterans. Then they have the VA healthcare, which we're going to get into. They have a youth and education program where they do outreach with teachers that are doing great things in the community. They have a scholarship program for youths in the community. They send veterans of foreign wars go into school systems and classrooms, and they talk to the kids about things that veterans do to keep our freedom. And it's just
sure.
it was amazing to really just see all of this. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about those different avenues and a little more detail if you are able to talk a little detail about those, like troop support. I know that was a big thing for me when we were overseas. I would always seek out places that were there for the troops to give us a little piece of home, movies, or this, that, or just any advice for us. So I saw that the VFW does a lot of that.
Oh, absolutely. They touch on so many different aspects, Slade. I mean, the one you did touch on is the Washington, where
Hmm.
the national actually goes into Congress, and they are changing and fighting for the different types of laws and rules and the different presumptives that a lot of our veterans have incurred while in service, and these disabilities that these individuals have like I said, incurred, aren't necessarily always reviewed or looked upon in the way that it should be. And those are the individuals I deal with on a regular basis.
Hmm.
So as I deal more on the health side
Yeah.
of the VFW, if you will.
Sure.
um,
Which
I
is which is
spend
a
more time.
huge
Yeah,
talking point, right? Because I mean, there are so many veterans out there that are entitled to benefits that don't even know what they are entitled to. And
absolutely.
it's from, I mean, because granted, the last few years, unfortunately, with the Afghan war, you have a lot more service members coming back dismembered, which is like what you think about when you think about a disability. You think of somebody with a leg blown off or an arm missing or something like that. But there's so much more to what happens to a service member in service, from and I don't want to diminish things, but like things like tinnitus, where you have constant ringing in your ears from either gun blast or jet engines or whatever it may be, to PTSD, to there are so many things. I mean, you could probably speak more, to it than I can, but there's just so much that the VFW is there to help you manage and help you understand that you're entitled to.
Absolutely, absolutely, Slade. You hit the nail right on the head. There are a number of lanes that you can navigate within the the medical aspect of it. And like you were saying, our Gulf War veterans, and we're still dealing with the Gulf War. I mean, from, what is it, 1990
Right.
on current, so everything that's been going on, throughout the years is still considered Gulf War. But, the individuals that have been exposed to burn pit, we're finding folks with sinusitis, rhinitis, things like that, asthma, that weren't necessarily, looked at. It was one of those things that you found that these individuals are coming back. They started, having these conditions. They're going to the doc, and some of them were, had the ability to know that, hey, maybe I should file a claim, you know, and it wasn't always necessarily easy to obtain.
Hmm.
And recently, we've had what they call the PAC Act that has just come through Congress and it has been approved, and it has really opened up a lot of doors for a lot of veterans, even Vietnam veterans that are in Camp Lejeune during a time frame where there was contaminated water, and due to that contaminated water, there are a number of disabilities, what we call presumptive,
Hmm.
and these are disabilities that the Veterans Affairs, the VA, recognizes, without you having to go to the doctor and trying to prove that, this particular disability was due to your time in service.
Oh,
This is what we call medical nexus. We need a doctor to be able to make that link, right, on
right.
on their, medical profession. Um, Whereas this is, if you have been diagnosed with it and you're dealing with it and you were in these locations during this time frame, automatic. We file the claim for, it might be lung cancer or, prostate cancer, bladder cancer, just depending on where you were
Well,
at the time. But
it
yeah,
seems that we have then come a long way, and that's fantastic news that you don't have to fight so hard to get benefits that you deserve for a campaign that you were in. Because there was a time where you had mentioned it, you would file for disability, but then you would have to get a doctor to sign off on it. You'd have to prove that
absolutely.
you have this disability or whatever it may be. And sometimes that's really hard to do. If it's like you said, if it's sinuses or you get headaches, or
Hmm.
how do you prove that, you know? So I'm really happy to hear that they're now moving towards, if you are in a campaign in a certain location and they know that there are things happening to the human body from being in that location, that you can just get your disability and you can get treated for it and not have to spend so much
Now,
time proving it.
and when you're dealing with a presumptive, yes, it is a little bit easier.
Hmm.
There are those situations, and there are a number of them, and this is where, individuals like myself, individuals that I work with, I've got a great group, and we we have to really look at some of these where it's harder to prove.
Right.
They are really tough to prove, and it makes the whole event very unpleasant. It can. The frustration with the veteran, the frustration with the VA, really trying to prove this particular disability took place while in service. Something might be missing, but that's my job. That's my job to find that missing leak, or help you, put you in touch with the right people
Hmm.
that might be able to assist you with that link. Be able to see it in a manner that, okay, we see you're dealing with this particular disability,
Right.
but, we still need to link it to your time in service. And we do have those individuals out there, thank goodness, that are willing to assist in that manner, so that when we do file those claims, that we are submitting a successful claim. We have that medical evidence. We have that link to submit. And yes, it can be a little tougher. The road can be a little harder. You run into those veterans
Yeah.
that are a little less easygoing, if you will. It,
Sure.
it, it makes the road, that much
Well,
harder
I would
for everybody to
imagine
get
that
down.
you're dealing with veterans from all the way from the Vietnam War to present,
World
and
War
you're
II.
world. Oh, really? Going back to World War II.
Oh yeah, all
So
the way
you're
back to World War II.
so
I mean,
you
obviously they're far and few, but we
sure.
do deal with them.
Yeah, so you're dealing with not only an age gap, different personalities, people from different
Absolutely.
walks of life. So you really have to, I would imagine you have to take every case and be not just an advocate that knows the rules and the letter of the law of how to get the disability, but you
Hmm.
have to almost be a counselor to be able to talk to them in a certain way to
Well,
let them want to let you help them.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, none of us are doctors, none of us are attorneys, none of us are counselors, maybe some of them, but yeah, I mean, you have to operate on all of those levels
Yeah,
and, give everybody their time.
yeah.
Uh, Everybody wants to explain their situation, and that's the best part because you can allow that individual to come in. They have an issue. They need to tell you about it, and it can be as short as 15 minutes, it can be as long as 2 hours.
Hmm.
You give that individual their time
And
to
there's no
get
charge,
that
right,
off their
for them to
chest.
come in and talk to you?
None. And if somebody's charging for this is ridiculous.
Oh,
This
oh,
is
I've
one
seen
of
it.
those things that
I've
we
seen it when I was going through the forums way back when, and I was doing
Mhm.
research on how to file for disability. There are people out there that will charge. They will take a percentage of your disability check to be able to file this for you, and it makes me so angry because knowing that there's people like you out there who are helping them for free, and
Correct.
it's an honor to be able to serve these people and help them file their paperwork and get them the disability they deserve, the medical treatment they deserve. It's not just about the paycheck, but there are people out there taking advantage. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about filing disability, know that the VFW will do this for free. They will help you out. They have people there that will help you for free.
And I want to capitalize on that, Slade. Please, please, please do not file a claim on your own.
Hmm.
Don't do it. Bring it to an organization like mine, like VFW, DAV, American Legion, VVA. We all do the same thing. It's free. Bring your DD 214. And if you're a military, you know what that is. That is your separation paperwork. Bring that copy. Come on in. If you don't have a copy of it, we will order one for you.
Oh, wow.
But
That's great.
do not pay for one. Do not pay anybody to do this for you. We will do this for free.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's such great work that you guys do. And and I wanted to touch on too because it's just something that's come up in the news a lot too. That if there are people out there without a physical disability but are struggling with mental health, that there's help there
Hmm.
for people with mental health as well. I was shocked to learn in 2012, 22 veterans a day commit suicide. And then they just released a report saying if you add in the drug overdoses, that goes up to 44 veterans a day are committing suicide. So there, just know that there is help out there. Organizations like that Troy works at, like the VFW, they are there to help and they have those services.
Yeah, we will definitely help anybody to navigate that process. There are crisis hotlines for these individuals to contact. The VA hospitals throughout the United States, they all have there's an emergency room. I mean, if it's that bad, go to the emergency room.
Hmm.
If you have an appointment with your primary care, let them know this is the time. Have those conversations. Don't be so proud to not have that
Well,
conversation
well, that's the
because,
thing.
yes,
We
you're
we have
absolutely
to
right.
we have to make the stigma of mental health not that there is no stigma to mental health, right? We have to make it okay to
Correct.
talk about it. There are so many people coming back from war or their time in service, or even just once you're out and not being able to adjust to regular life, and they're just so afraid to talk about it because it makes them feel weak, and it doesn't. Everybody's going through it. Everybody has times of
Absolutely.
depression, and there are people like yourself and other veteran organizations that are there you can talk to. So, Troy, I wanted to ask you this. So, for people that are first wanting to, if they wanted to file a claim for the very first time, a disability claim with the VA, what's the first step
Mhm.
for a veteran? Where do they go? What should they seek out? How do they go about, getting started?
So right there, you said the VA, and that is the biggest misconception. A lot of folks will start with Veterans Affairs, and nine times out of, not to say that they won't assist, but 9 times out of 10, they are going to direct you to one of those organizations like myself that I had mentioned a couple of times. What they're going to want to do is there are a number of places you can start if you live in, say, said county. Whatever town you live in. A lot of times there's a county veteran service office or a county VA, and there will be advocates there. You can take it to the next step. You can go to the VA hospital. They have advocates on site. Um, all all of them do pretty much. We have satellite offices for the hospitals that do the same thing. You can start there. If you're unclear, you can always call your regional office in your large cities. Like I work in Detroit, we have the regional office in Detroit, the Patrick V. McNamara, in downtown. That's the Federal Building. Um, they have all most of the organizations right there. You can reach out. You can Google any of these. Everybody's pretty much got a website anymore
Hmm.
with names, numbers, emails, things of that nature. I recommend you reach out. Like I had mentioned before, bring your DD 214, find these individuals, they will assist. There's no reason for you to contact an attorney. They are going to take 20% or better
Right.
of whatever you get awarded. And
Right.
there's no need for that when we're going to do it for absolutely nothing. And we are going to fight. We are going to go through, we're going to have access to your profile, that we are going to be able to go through your medical records once things are filed. We don't have access to, say, your medical records, say at the VA, but once we file a claim, we'll get those and we'll be able to go through them. We'll be able to go through your medical records from your time in service to see if there was something there. Because a lot of them file a claim, it could be 20, 30 years down the road and they file their first claim. You don't remember what you went to
That's right.
medical for while you were in service.
That's right.
So it'll give us an opportunity to go through those as well. But come see us. There's a number of ways to find us. I'd say start if you have the ability to get on the internet and locate those websites, be it the VFW, be it the American Legion, be it the VVA, the DAV. They're all in those communities, and the outreach is incredible. You don't have to go far. Typically, some people do, depending on where you live. You might have to travel a little bit, but a lot of times you can just contact us over the phone and we can have these conversations. You don't
So
necessarily
easy.
have to come in and do a face to face. After COVID, during COVID, we all were working from home and we
Right.
figured out a way to do it, over the phone, via, internet, email, things of that nature. So we've really gotten a lot better at how we take care of our veterans. So I mean, you don't necessarily have to come see us if you live far away.
Yeah.
Just have a conversation. We will help you with the information. We'll walk you through it. We
Great.
will walk you through it.
And and two more things I wanted to ask you. So first is, what are some of the most common types of disability claims that you see? Because again, I think a lot of people think they're not entitled to benefits because they weren't severely hurt, or at least physically, they don't feel
Sure.
like they deserve the benefits. But the VA offers benefits for a myriad of different ailments. And again, it's not just about getting a check, it's also getting free care at the VA hospital for if you are rated to have some type of disability or something wrong with you from a service connected disability, then you can go in and get treated for it. And I know there are people that struggle with, like I said, tinnitus and back pain. What are some other ailments that you see?
Oh my God. I would say hearing loss is probably the number one.
Hmm.
That typically gets most people in the door. Um, Hearing loss, tinnitus, ringing in your ear, that's usually the one that gets everybody going. Like you had mentioned, once you get service connected for, a particular disability, that will allow you access to the VA, especially if you haven't utilized the VA, and if it's been 10, 20 years or whatever it may be. I recommend the one thing I have to tell everybody: if you are a somebody that is serving currently and you're getting ready to separate, go to the VA hospital the next day, get yourself registered. You have the ability to do that. You will have access to the healthcare. Where it gets a little slippery is when you have waited, there's so much time has elapsed. Then, it comes down to, do you have a service connection? It comes down to, what are your financials? There's a threshold there that if you make too much, you're not eligible. And that's typically when folks come to see us.
Hmm.
We start filing those claims, right? Um, once that takes place. But getting back to the number of claims, I mean, it's everything. I mean, it's head to toe. It's mental. It's the physicality. I mean,
Yeah.
if you incurred a disability while in service, or something was aggravated, or you might have had a disability before you joined the service, and it got worse while you were in the service, and it's documented, and we can get documentation on that. There's a claim. A lot of folks, like you were saying before, don't feel that. There are other people that are in worse shape. They deserve it more than I do. No, the reason we need you to come in there and file those small claims, like say a hearing loss or tinnitus, is so that budget is there at the end of the year, so that when we go back and we get that money, so that we can pay these veterans, it's available for those guys that really need it. We don't want them to go without.
Right. And when somebody comes forward with an ailment like the Gulf War syndrome, that was never a thing until somebody came forward and said, you know what, I can't sleep at night. I'm having migraines. I'm having
Right.
stomach issues. And then more and more people started coming forward and say, you know what, I'm having those symptoms too. Until then it became a VA rated disability because a lot of people
And
came forward and said they're all having the same symptoms. Same with burn pits, right? People came forward and said,
yep.
hey, I was around burn pits and now I'm having these symptoms. We need to do something about that. So there's strength in
Well, and it's a
numbers.
thing, Slade. I mean, especially for our Vietnam veterans, they've been fighting for hypertension, high blood pressure, forever.
Mm.
Couldn't get it, and it finally came through this last year through our PAC Act that Congress finally approved. And all these individuals that filed for hypertension in the day that were denied, we can reopen those
Oh,
and
wow.
and and file it as a presumptive according to this PAC Act. It's that easy. So I implore, those veterans that might have applied for that particular disability, that were denied for it back in the day. It's been reopened and it's being approved now. Uh, when they're actually going to approve it, say you're going to be awarded and you start getting paid, that's there's still some legality there, right?
Hmm.
They're still working through all of that, but it is definitely on the books, and
Yeah.
we're seeing, Parkinsonism and hyperthyroidism, things that weren't on the books before as a presumptive for these Vietnam veterans, are available to them now. So we're starting to see that influx of Vietnam veterans again, come in and reopen those claims.
Oh, that's great.
It's really done. I can't say enough about our national level, where they have gone in and they just keep digging, keep fighting. They're like a pit bull. They just won't let it go.
Yeah.
It just, and that's what you need. It's exactly what we're doing. You got it on my level, where we're filing those claims. And like you said, if you don't come in and say something, it'll never get documented, so that when they do look at it, the number of people that are coming in and saying the same thing, they're not going to look at it.
Right.
Now they're looking at it.
Right.
They are looking at it.
Well, and another misconception I wanted to just bring up real quickly is you can file more than one claim at a time. So,
Oh,
for
absolutely.
people that feel like they have to, pick the more of the two evils, like if you have tinnitus and, back pain and you're like, oh, which one do I
Mhm.
pick? You can do both. You, as many claims as you want to put down, you can do that. If they were legitimate claims that were were brought on in the military, or as you said, if they were aggravated in the military.
Correct.
You don't have to pick just one.
Correct. No, and we'll help you navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go through the list of disabilities. We'll see what is what we can prove right off the bat. Hell, there's secondary, Slade. You can get a let's say your back was awarded, and now you've got hip problems, and you've got sciatic problems, and you've got knee problems, and things of that nature. If we can get a doctor to say that these are from your service connected disability, we'll file for those. We'll play the bone game. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. We'll put you in touch with the right people. We know how it needs to be written up. We have examples. We can hand those out. We'll provide that to the veterans so that they can take it to the doctor.
Yeah.
So that they don't have to sit there and struggle. Getting a doctor to write a lot of this up is time consuming. It
Mm-hmm.
is. So if we can make it as easy as possible for the doctor to provide that type of statement, we have that, and we have doctors that are willing to do that, and we know these people. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be something that took place while in service, but it could be, like I said, a secondary
Mm-hmm.
from something that took place while in
Yeah.
service.
Well, it's fantastic that there's a group of people like yourself that are out there fighting for veterans and making sure that they are getting the care that they need and the disability payments that they deserve. And the last thing I'll say is I was on the VFW site today, vfw.org, and now through, I believe they said Veterans Day, they'll match donations up to $50,000. So if you're inclined to want to donate to the VFW, I'm sure that money goes to good use in helping to support advocates for veterans. And like Troy said, if you're a veteran and you're in need of some guidance on how to file disability or just want information on how to get started, reach out to your local VFW. They are there to help you. That's their whole goal is to support veterans. Troy, you are a class act, my friend. You have given your life to service. You have, served our country in the military. You are a hero for that. And then it's not often that you find somebody that then continues to serve the veteran community when they get out. So I am lucky to have you as a friend, and we are all lucky to have you as an advocate. Thank you so much for being here today and giving us your knowledge. And I appreciate you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you too, and I appreciate your platform and what you're doing, and all your success, Slade. You deserve it, and I think you're doing a great thing here. Really getting it out there to the masses, and letting these folks know that they're not alone. They're not alone.
Yeah.
There's people like myself all over the United States that are willing to assist. It's tough. It's tough trying to find those individuals. I understand. So if this gets out there and we can kind of point them in the right direction, and I'll be honest, you can if you want to give my email address out, through this, I'm okay with that. It's troy.north@va.gov. If you've got questions, I'll answer. All my emails that come through, I make sure that you at least get pointed in the right direction. And
Sure.
if you've got questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you. And thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks again.